Hello there, friend. I see you. It's Tuesday, March 10th. Lots to get to and two amazing guests joining me today. Skye Perryman from Democracy Forward talks to us about all of the wins that they and we are not getting credit for. Then I talked to Nyyera Hawk, who is one of my all-time favorite commentators. She and I met on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher back in March 2018 and have been talking ever since. Two great conversations with two great women. I mentioned that they're women because last week it was like a dude fest, an all-week dude fest of guests here on the show. Nobody said anything, and I do make an effort to have as much diversity as I can, but I, of course, can always do better on every category and gather a lot of different viewpoints from different types of folks. But when it comes down to men and women, I do like to try to find as much of a balance as I can. And so we could get into that and reasons about it, but I don't want to digress too much. Point is, this week I will instead have mostly women. At least that's what it looks like for the first half of the week. I'll be joined by two excellent female guests on tomorrow's show, and you can watch both of them live today if you are on YouTube. Subscribe, youtube.com at @StandUpWithPete/StandUpWithPete. Same thing over at Substack, and you should be able to watch them live today. I'll be talking to Amy Littlefield of The Nation magazine about her new book, about her investigation into the mysterious death of abortion rights. Amy Littlefield is the author of Killers of Roe. I'll talk to her today around noon. And at 10 a.m., I'm scheduled to talk to the chief executive officer of a great organization called Represent Us, Maria McFarland Sanchez Moreno, will join me. 10 a.m., 12 noon live today. That's the plan. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Anything can change. And I will have two more awesome women to speak with today. So, yeah, doing the work. Glad to have you here. Thank you very much for joining me. Lots to get to. Sorry for the long preamble. Though I do want to remind you, I can't do any of this without you, this daily podcast and the community that has grown as a result of it. So cool. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Hope to see you in Las Vegas, April 9th through 12th, Podjam 3. Everybody, going to be a very, very fun time with you out there. Hopefully you get your tickets soon because they're going to probably go up. Get your tickets for Podjam, not the tickets for Podjam, but your airline tickets are probably going to go up. We will not be changing the price of Podjam 3 tickets. So you can link to it at the top of every day's show notes and get those tickets. See you in Las Vegas. All right, well, every day I get up early and I produce a news segment that's as good as anything out there, minus all of the dramatic New York Times, NPR music and the rest. I've got your headlines gathered from a litany of what I think are credible sources, and I want to go through them for you now, and then I've got some of yesterday's sound bites. So let's get to it and after it. And what is the top story? I'm going to go ahead and blow your mind with my top story and say that I think yesterday we should all be talking about this piece at the Miami Herald by the great Julie K. Brown, who has been covering Jeffrey Epstein and his trials and his legal matters from the very beginning. This headline at the Miami Herald dated March 9th, 2026 says, prison guards discussed covering up Epstein's death in custody. Fellow inmate tells FBI. Okay, it's a former inmate. Does that make them less credible? An inmate housed at Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York told the FBI he overheard guards talking about covering up Jeffrey Epstein's death on the morning he died. The federal government's online Epstein library contains a 5-page handwritten report of an FBI interview with an inmate who awoke the morning of August 10, 2019, to the loud commotion in the Special Housing Unit, or SHU, where he and Epstein were jailed. Breathe! Breathe! He recalled officers shouting about 6:30 a.m. Then he heard an officer say, dudes, you killed that dude. A female guard replied, if he is dead, we're going to cover it up, and he's going to have an alibi. My officers, the FBI note said. The inmate claimed the whole wing overheard the exchange. Later, after learning Epstein had died, he said inmates said Miss Noel killed Jeffrey. He identified the female guard as Tova Noel, one of 2 correctional officers who were later charged with falsifying reports so that it appeared from their records that they had made their rounds that night when they had not. The charges against her and the other officer, Michael Thomas, were later dropped, but both were fired. The inmate's account has not been substantiated, but it nevertheless raises questions about Epstein's in-custody death. That's just the beginning of the article, but I will have a clip from Julie K. Brown coming up. Everybody talking about that one yesterday. And I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it today and in the coming days. All right, well, the other top story, obviously, our dear leader's war that he started with Iran. So much to say about that. Gas prices hit $3.54 a gallon. That's the average. Chris Slayton, friend of the show and of mine, sent me an image from the state of Washington where he was paying $5.05. So send me a picture of the price of gas at the pump and where you are if you want, and we can go around the nation with our amazing listening community here and share the price of gas in your neck of the woods. Here's how the New York Times recapped it last night. Oil prices swung wildly today in a sign of uncertainty about the war in the Middle East, now in its second week, and its potential to disrupt global energy supplies. The international oil benchmark surged this morning to more than $110 a barrel for the first time since the coronavirus pandemic. Countries capped prices and ratioed fuel as economists warned that prolonged hostilities between the U.S. and Iran could cause global inflation to rise and economic growth to slow. But by this afternoon, oil prices fell sharply to below $90 a barrel after President Trump suggested that the war could be nearing an end. I think the war is very complete, pretty much, Trump said. In a speech hours later, the president delivered a conflicting message. We've won in many ways, but not enough. We'll not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. Like my pants, I just defeated them because I pooped in them. Nobody knows. There was a quiet fart and then all hell broke loose. Earlier in the day, the G7 nations signaled that they were not yet worried about the running short of fuel. For now, Americans are mostly feeling the conflict's effects at the gas pump, with prices up nearly 17% since the war began. Iran, however, has showed no sign of bowing to Trump's demand for surrender. Senior clerics there named the son of the slain supreme leader as his successor, a signal of defiance after Trump described the son as, quote, unacceptable. Iran also launched missile and drone strikes today across the Middle East. Iran's military and hardline political forces celebrated a new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. Sorry, I hit the K there. But in Tehran, opponents of the government chanted death to Mojtaba from their windows, reflecting widespread muted dissent. A newly released video adds to the evidence that an American missile likely hit an Iranian elementary school, contradicting Trump's claim that Iran was responsible. A separate video captured an apparent strike near a boys' school in Iran. So maybe it wasn't just the girls. U.S. and Israeli strikes in Iran have killed about 1,300 people. According to local officials, Iranian attacks across the Middle East have killed more than 30. Also yesterday, in New York City, 2 men were charged with attempting to support the terrorist group ISIS in connection with a failed bombing outside the official residence of Mayor Zohran Mamdani of New York City over the weekend. The men were arrested after they attempted to detonate 2 explosive devices during a far-right anti-Islam rally. Okay, so there was a whole bunch of far-right losers there. They were met by like 100 anti-Nazi protesters, and also joining them, 2 members of ISIS. The devices didn't detonate. No one was injured at all. Federal prosecutors said that both men had cited the Islamic State after they were arrested, and I guess they gave some kind of ISIS hand signal in a photograph after they were arraigned. One said he wanted to cause more damage than the Boston Marathon had. Oh, all right. Well, I'm glad they failed at making their bombs. And crazy story coming out of New York City, and might have been avoided had you not had this provocateur with his pig that he cooked, apparently, or maybe he didn't. I don't know, but it was horrible. They brought out literally a pig to put in front of the mayor's house. I believe I have that story right. Let's move on to others, shall we? The latest American fatality in the war is from my town, apparently. He was a New York Police Department officer. He was a National Guardsman, and he died yesterday in Kuwait of non-combat medical-related injuries, apparently. And then I see that my town supervisor, who is a total MAGA, announced that we are so sorry to hear of the death of Sorfleet Davies, who I'm talking about. Apparently he had 6 kids here in the town. I'm not obviously familiar with him, don't know anybody who was, probably kept to himself, did his work in the city, and also was deployed in Kuwait, and now he is gone. The NYPD mourns officer who died while serving with National Guard in Kuwait. great. And also another National Guard soldier died in Saudi Arabia as a result of injuries he sustained during an Iranian attack. I don't have his name in front of me here. But of course, that was big news yesterday, though not big enough. The latest deadly boat strike, I did mention this yesterday. It caught yesterday's news, but worth mentioning again. U.S. military said it killed 6 men Sunday in a strike on an alleged drug smuggling vessel in the Eastern Pacific as part of the Trump regime's campaign against, quote, alleged traffickers, which continues to be illegal and a human rights violation and immoral and just disgusting and gross and shameful. In Ukraine, Russia launched a barrage of drones and missiles overnight on Saturday, damaging infrastructure and killing at least 10 people, including 2 children in a northeast city of Ukraine. So that war continues to rage and just not get as many headlines as it probably would if we'd not started another one. Press freedom organizations are celebrating the court decision invalidating Kari Lake's tenure at Voice of America and nullifying the mass layoffs that she ordered last year. And I'm celebrating that as well. I hope you are also. And you know how Flacido Domingo keeps talking about all the wars he ended? It's such a sham. He keeps recounting the decades of fighting between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo as one of 8 wars he settled as he openly sought a peace prize. Well, yesterday, the Treasury Department imposed sanctions on the Rwandan military and 4 senior officers saying they are supporting militants in eastern Congo who resumed fighting within days of that December pact that he allegedly negotiated. So just more proof that what he says is just not true at all. The administration's retribution campaign has landed in court again, this time with a lawsuit from Anthropic, the artificial intelligence company behind the AI tool Claude that lost a deal with the Pentagon. And don't worry, ChatGPT came in and apparently got the deal. The entire New York Times podcast is about that yesterday and definitely worth listening to. I learned a lot from it. The Food and Drug Administration's controversial vaccines chief is leaving the agency again. I think he already left. This guy's a real POS, in my opinion. Dr. Vinay Prasad has led the FDA's vaccines and biotech drugs division. He'll depart at the end of April. Now, we found out from the FDA Commissioner Marty Makary. Federal health officials are searching for his replacement. Oh, great. I'm sure he'll be replaced by a guy named Mike Polio. Wouldn't that be just kind of, on the nose? Well, the U.S. Postal Service is apparently in trouble. Recently appointed Postmaster General David Steiner said he expects the USPS to run out of cash by 2027 without help from Congress. In recent interviews with Reuters and the Associated Press, Steiner said that unless Congress lifts the agency's statutory debt limit of $15 billion, which was enacted in 1990, the USPS may not be able to pay its vendors or employees by February 2027. The agency would need to borrow more money from the U.S. Treasury to continue operations. And architect of many of the Trump administration's most consequential climate rollbacks, a guy named Jeffrey B. Clark, remember him? Well, guess what? He's left his position as the White House regulatory czar, according to people familiar with the decision. I'm not sure why. I want to read more into that, but this guy oversaw the dismantlement of government restrictions on greenhouse gas emissions and water and air pollution. I can't think of a bigger villain than him. He also faced criminal investigation in connection with Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election results. That's where we first heard his name. So this guy is such a bringer of bad things. And now he's moved on. I don't know where or why, but I'd love to catch up with him. The FBI expanded its investigation into the 2020 presidential election, speaking of, issuing a grand jury subpoena for information about voting results in Arizona, specifically Maricopa County. Well, that's going to go great. Ohio State's president resigned, saying that he had an inappropriate relationship with someone seeking public resources. Live Nation, the concert giant that includes Ticketmaster, settled litigation with the Justice Department, agreed to change how it makes deals with venues and artists. I'm sure it's going to be so much more fair now. A little accountability for bad men who were hanging out when doing bad things with Jeffrey Epstein. Casey Wasserman's name was dropped from the sports and marketing agency that he founded after he appeared in a recent release of files about Jeffrey Epstein. And speaking of bad men, the Alexander brothers, 2 prominent real estate brokers and security executive, were convicted of engaging in a years-long sex trafficking conspiracy. I read the story on this one, and man, these guys were bad. 3 brothers, 2 were twins, and they were huge real estate brokers and made millions and millions of dollars, but they'd been accused of drugging women and raping women since all the way back into high school. They're like 38 years old or something, at least the twins were, and they're all in their 30s. And yesterday they were convicted. It was pretty ugly and pretty gross, but they had at least 11 victims testify. And those are the ones that came forward. And there are probably a lot more, is my guess, usually the case there. A New York Times analysis found that billionaires made 19% of all reported federal campaign contributions in 2024. And I think there should be a law against people having that much money. I sure do. End billionaires. And end this news segment, will I? Yeah, you got it. That's it. That's all the headlines that I've gathered for you. What did I miss? StandUpWithPete@gmail.com. You can email me all day long and send me news stories and ideas for sound from the day or anything that you've seen. Let's get to those clips that I've gathered for you right now. Let's start with Julie K. Brown on MS Now talking about that story, which was the top story yesterday at the Miami Herald and around the country. This news of the conspiracy of the death of Jeffrey Epstein potentially unfolding here.
A newly surfaced document published in the DOJ's Epstein database reveals that an inmate once told the FBI that he overheard prison guards talking about covering up Epstein's death on the morning the sex offender died. The document includes 5 handwritten pages of notes from the unidentified inmate's FBI interview. And while unsubstantiated, the details are likely to raise more questions about Epstein's death, which was officially ruled a suicide. Joining us now, Julie K. Brown, investigative reporter for the Miami Herald. It's good to see you again, Julie. The inmate claimed that the whole wing, as I understand it, overheard this exchange among guards. Tell us what the notes from the FBI say.
Well, this particular inmate said that he woke up to the commotion of them discovering that something was wrong, in the CHU, which is the special housing unit for people like Epstein who are supposed to be watched more carefully. And in this particular case, he heard the yelling and the screaming, and of course it roused him up. And he told the FBI that he heard them say something to the effect of, "You dudes, you killed this dude, you killed him." And then another female guard saying, "Well, we don't have to worry about this because we're going to cover it up, and my guys are going to have an alibi," or words to that effect. And so, this raises questions about what actually happened on that night, and for good reason. There's been a lot of errors we know now there were a lot of errors made that night. And if you really look at the whole picture and all the problems that they had, I think that it's worthy to take a look at this inmate's statement, even though it was uncorroborated.
So I know that you tried to reach the lawyer for the female guard who was working. MS Now has tried to reach her lawyer. But what else do we know about her and for that matter, the others who were on duty that day?
Well, she was a relatively new correctional officer, as I understand it. And the other thing that came out over the weekend was the New York Post was the first to discover, and I also found the documents myself that showed that the DOC investigators, the DOJ investigators, actually did some work on her finances, got her banking statements, and you could see them in the files, and it shows that she had quite a number of cash deposits into her bank account. So that's suspicious. And she apparently searched for Epstein's name just 40 minutes before his body was found. So, there's all these pieces that don't make sense and have never made sense, going back to the July 23rd when they found him laying on the floor of a cell. And his first words when he regained consciousness was, "My cellmate tried to kill me." He never said that he tried to commit suicide. In fact, all the psychological reports say that he felt that he had a good case, that he was hiring lawyers, that he had a great life. There's no indication at all that he was suicidal in these psychological evaluations. So one has to wonder why they didn't investigate and seem to, I guess, believe his cellmate who told him that Epstein tried commit suicide. His cellmate was a quadruple killer, by the way, and they believed him when he said that Epstein tried to commit suicide, even though Epstein said that that wasn't the case.
Well, what do you think about that? I mean, some of those details were already known. I don't remember many of them. I don't know. I don't remember ever learning or reading, if I did, that Jeffrey Epstein regained consciousness and said he tried to kill me. I don't think I knew that. Did you know that? All right. Well, this is crazy. I don't know what else to say about it. I've got other clips that I want to get to, so I'm going to do that now as opposed to just wanting to talk about that nonstop. You know what? I think we need some comedy. Let's go to Colbert real quick.
We now are on, was this 10? Day 10 of the Iran war, and we're not any closer to finding out what the goal is. Is it regime change? Is it ending a nuclear program? Is it changing the name to Donald Trump's Iran-a-Lago? But we are learning more about the cost, because according to estimates, the first week of the war alone cost approximately $6 billion. Yeah, it's surprising. You know, did you know what you could buy with $6 billion? 27 Kristi Noem Horsey commercials. It's unclear. It's unclear how long the war will continue, because this weekend Trump said the war will only stop after Iran's unconditional surrender, to which Iran replied, "That's a dream America should take to their grave." Okay, that's spooky. And metal as hell. Is there any more to that statement? Oh, Thank you, Cleric Disturbed. After Iran surrenders, Trump wants to pick their next leader, as he said on Air Force One.
We don't want to come back every 5 years or every 10 years and do this, so we want to pick a president that's not going to be leading their country into a war.
When can we pick one of those? They are way ahead of me. They were way ahead of me. We were all jumping for that joke at the same time. There are some candidates for the job we know Trump doesn't want. Last week, there were rumors that the new Supreme Leader would be the second son of the former Supreme Leader. But Trump said, "Combination is unacceptable to me. It can't be. Look, it cannot be. There's no way it can be Khamenei's second son." His mouth is all gums, and he had to repeat kindergarten 3 times. "No, wait, that's my son. That's my second son."
All right, I needed the laughs. Real bad. Whew, that feels just a little bit better. All right, let's get back to the clips. Here is Kamal Kharazi. Kharazi, foreign policy advisor to the Office of the Supreme Leader. Seems like a pretty good job. He's talking to CNN's Frederick Pleitgen, who's doing, I think, really good reporting from Iran. If you're not familiar with him, you should check out his work. He's doing good work. Follow him on all the social medias. Anyway, here is this exclusive interview that a CNN reporter had with the foreign policy advisor to the Office of the Supreme Leader. I almost said extreme leader. Same thing.
Is your side seeking, or will you seek, a ceasefire with the United States at this point in time, and with Israel?
I don't see any room for diplomacy anymore, because Donald Trump has been deceiving others and not keeping with his promises.
How does all of this end, then? If you say right now there's no room for negotiation, President Trump says he wants complete surrender, what does that lead to?
There's no room unless the economic pressure would be built up to the extent that other countries would intervene to guarantee this termination of aggression of Americans and Israelis against Iran.
Iran has a new supreme leader. What does that mean for your military effort and the confrontation with the United States and Israel?
That means the system is quite functioning.
The United States says it's drastically degraded the Iranian military, the capabilities as far as missiles is concerned, drones is concerned. How much longer can you do this?
That is one of the false narratives that the United States government is producing. Iranian military is quite strong, as you see, because they have the motivation, they have the arms that they need, which are produced in Iran.
So your side is ready for a long war if the United States and Israel choose that. Do you consider this an existential threat to the Islamic Republic?
It is an existential threat to the Islamic Republic, and therefore we have to stay with full might, as we are doing now.
Finally, what is your message to President Trump as we sit here, as the war is going on?
What is important for us is the end of this game, and we are ready to continue that game.
And you mean how this war will end?
The end of the game would be the time that Americans and Israelis would come to this understanding that this strategy is not working, and they have to stop their aggressions.
All right. Well, someone get that guy a glass of water, huh? I thought that was very interesting and worth listening to all of it. All of those questions were really good, and it was concise. Hopefully you could understand this older gentleman, Kamal Harazi, who talked with such just like no passion in his voice at all, just kind of matter of fact. I'm sure that's purposeful why he got the job and what he's trying to do with that CNN reporter. But the one thing I heard that stuck out to me is about the economic pressure. And I've heard this is a strategy from other analysts, but that they're going to try to make this cost the U.S. and the world a lot at the gas pump. And the price of energy will raise everything else. So that's the economic pressure I think he was referring to. And that is clearly their strategy if they can keep it up. We will have to wait and see, because we are already seeing Trump caving on this. Analysts are saying he's pulling the cave, he's ducking and running because he is already talking about the war ending, and he's terrified of what could happen to markets, and then it could be all on him. We'll see. Also weird that he kept calling it a game, right? Well, if it's a game, I think we're losing, actually. So Gasolini is trying to say that he doesn't think that we bombed that school in Iran. He thinks that it was the Iranians. And apparently he thinks that they did it using one of our Tomahawk missiles, because we sell them around. You know, everybody buys these Tomahawks. Do they? Does Iran have Tomahawks? So he's been asked about this a couple times, and I'm glad to see that reporters with access to him continue to ask him about it, because it's such an important issue. And many of us are going to stay on top of this. I saw the very influential Ron Filipkowski of Midas Touch, who is former military himself. He's a real bulldog, and he mentioned that he is not going to stop talking about it, which means that big outlet won't. And, well, how about mainstream reporters in the New York Times and even Fox News? First, let's go to that question from last night's press conference that the Hippopotas was having after he talked to, I think, Republican donors. I think he was in Florida. Anyway, here is New York Times reporter asking that question, doing a really good job. And I rarely play Donald Trump's voice and do everything I can to avoid it, but we really want to get him on the record on this one, and more importantly, give credit to the reporter for asking him this question.
Mr. President, you just suggested that Iran somehow got its hands on a Tomahawk and bombed its own elementary school on the first day of the war, but you're the only person in your government saying this. Even your defense secretary wouldn't say that when he was asked, standing over your shoulder on your plane on Saturday. Why are you the only person saying this?
Because I just don't know enough about it. I think it's something that I was told is under investigation. But Tomahawks are used by others, as you know. Numerous other nations have Tomahawks. They buy them from us. But I will certainly, whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
Well, we will see what the report shows and if he's willing to live with that report. Sorry again that I had to play his voice, but here is Fox News chief national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin talking to Fox's Brett Baer, saying that she believes he's trying to muddy the waters and thinks that he knows the U.S. bombed the elementary school, despite the denial.
I want to bring in Jen Griffin, our national security correspondent. One of the questions, Jen, in that news conference was about the strike on the girls' school that's next to a base in Iran, and it was a Tomahawk missile. The president saying Tomahawks are used by other countries, but an investigation is ongoing. What do we know about where that stands?
Well, that was a bit surprising to me because basically the U.S. has Tomahawks. Tomahawks have to be fired from either submarines or from warships. The Brits and the Australians have Tomahawks, but they're not part of this conflict. And then you also have the Japanese who are in a testing phase. So it seems highly unlikely that it would be anyone's Tomahawk other than a U.S. Tomahawk that hit that school. And I think the president knows that. He just knows that this is certainly a mistake, a big mistake, and it's being investigated, but he's trying to sort of muddy the waters by talking about the Tomahawks.
Yeah, they were saying that they didn't believe it was theirs, or they believed that Iran misfired something. Are we sure that it was a Tomahawk that hit that school?
There's no evidence that the Iranians fired anything at the school. If you look at the satellite imageries, and there have been a lot of investigations from the air, from these satellite photos, showing the impact and showing the likelihood that it was a Tomahawk.
Leo's working hard.
Yeah, even Jen Griffin takes a paycheck from Fox News, but she doesn't want to be on the record of lying about that. All those girls dying and who did it. And, well, good for her, I guess. All right. A couple more clips I've gathered for you. Here is Jen Psaki talking to Beto O'Rourke, former Texas candidate for Senate, talking about the current Texas candidate for Senate, James Tallarico. Beto O'Rourke is a talented politician, although he came up short, but he came close in Texas. And so he's talking about James Tallarico as if he's like the best of us. Well, here it is.
What an exciting time. There's like a jolt of energy, I think, going through people just watching what's transpired today. But let me start by asking you this. I mean, Democrats, as you well know, you know better than anyone, you came very close in 2018. And since then, though, there have been some Republican gains. Republicans have gained among Latinos over the course of the last several years. They've made some headway in South Texas. We've seen encouraging things like almost nearly 200,000 more votes in the Democratic primary, and obviously some flips. But it would be seismic for Democrats to win this seat. It does feel like they have a better chance than ever. But why? Why are you jazzed and excited about this possibility this year, maybe more than you've been in the past?
Yeah, I've never been more excited. I mean, let's start with James Tallarico. This is one of, if not the most talented politicians I have ever seen. Those of us who have watched his career in the Texas House have known that he's incredibly talented, but for the rest of the nation, they got to see him in the closing months of this really competitive primary, fought against another generational talent in Jasmine Crockett, who made James an even better candidate. We couldn't ask for anyone better to be at the top of the ticket. You have Gina Hinojosa, who is our new nominee for governor against Greg Abbott here. She's phenomenal. And then Jen, for the first time since 1974, there is a Democrat running for every state house seat in Texas. There's 150 of them. Every state Senate seat, every congressional seat, 38 of them. You have Democrats running in 254 counties. All of them will bring net new Democratic voters to the fold in their own races, and they'll send them up to the top of the ticket for James. As you saw on January 31 of this year, there was a 31-point swing in what was supposed to be the largest reliably red county in America, Tarrant County, where Taylor Remmett defeated the Republican contender, outspent him 10-1, and won that seat by 14 points, the same one that Donald Trump won 17 points in 2024. And then, as you mentioned, 200,000 more votes cast in the Democratic primary, even though Republicans spent $90 million tearing each other apart in the Republican Senate primary. Those 200,000 votes mean a lot to me because I lost by about 200,000 votes to Ted Cruz in 2018. And then lastly, there are so many great Democrats and just great Texans out there hustling and doing the work, powered by people The group that I lead is on Texas campuses every day, meeting voters where they are, registering them, staying in touch with them, and helping them to make the decision to vote in the most important election of our lifetimes. When James Tallarico wins in November, he will be the 51st vote in the U.S. Senate. Texas will save the country.
Oh, I hope you're right, Beto O'Rourke. Been wrong in the past, but I like that. I like that dramatic ending. Texas is going to save the country? Okay, good luck. Thanks, guys. Let us know what we can do to help you save the country. All right, let me wrap it up here with a little bit more comedy. I didn't get as many clips as I normally do yesterday, but I do want to give you some Jimmy Kimmel last night.
On Saturday, Trump found time to take part in what they call a dignified transfer. It's a solemn event in which the remains of service members who were killed in action are returned to U.S. soil. We've now lost 7 American lives in Trump's war on Iran. And paying respect to troops who sacrificed everything as a result of a decision you made is one of, if not the most important things a president does. But God forbid he just do it normally and respectfully. On Saturday, Trump made history, becoming the first president to attend a dignified transfer while wearing his own merch on his head. He wore a gold Donald Trump brand USA cap. He wore a hat. Baseball players don't even wear baseball caps. During the national anthem, he wears one to this. And here he is checking his diaper to see if it's full. It was. And by the way, in case you're in the market, you know how much our draft-dodging president charges for that USA cap? $55. That's right. It's like a whole teaspoon of gas. But make no mistake, fashion faux pas aside, this is a president who supports our military. He's even selling a special veteran edition of his God Bless the USA Trump Bible. $99.99. All proceeds go to him and his partners. That's right. Every situation is a merchandising opportunity. And, of course, whenever the president does something shameful, the heroes at Fox News swoop in to clean it up for him. Fox News covered this by using footage from a dignified transfer last year in which Trump was not wearing a hat. But the Internet figured it out pretty quick. So Fox News had to put out a statement. During our coverage of yesterday's dignified transfer, we inadvertently aired video from an older dignified transfer instead of the ceremony that took place yesterday. We deeply regret the error and deeply regret getting caught for the error. But hey.
Yeah, there you go, Jimmy Kimmel. I love it. He's my favorite. His jokes are my favorite. His writers I think are great. And I just love his delivery. He's just checking to see if his diaper was full, and it was. Makes me laugh. All right, let's get to my guests I've got for you today. Coming up, Nyyera Hawk, who is as great as always, so smart, great conversation with Nyyera. But first, I have Skye Perryman of Democracy Forward. She is a very impressive human being. She's the president and CEO of this very important nonpartisan national legal organization that promotes democracy and progress through litigation, regulatory engagement, communications, policy, education, and research. She was one of 2025's 100 most influential people in the world by Time Magazine, and now she is here slumming it with me on Stand Up, which I'm very grateful for because she and her organization are doing very, very important work. While every day I give you all the bad news, I think sometimes we hear headlines and don't realize that the follow-up to the headlines say it's the president's decision, executive decision, or one of his agencies making moves on their own being considered illegal or unconstitutional. Every day that's happening, but you don't always see that, as I try to explain and as we talked about in this conversation. She joined me live yesterday, so you can watch this on YouTube and as well as Substack and Facebook. I always say YouTube and Substack. Those are places I want you to subscribe to specifically and the most. Here we go right now with a very impressive, very intelligent Skye Perryman, who Democracy Forward is doing such great work. Go check them out, democracyforward.org. Follow them on all of the social medias. Let's do it. Okay, look who I've got. A very big guest doing really very important work, very purposeful work. Skye Perryman of Democracy Forward is back to talk about some good news, some triumphs. It's really great to see you.
Good to see you.
So going through your latest press releases, it's like reading good news. There's so much bad news, and that's that's what news is. It's the aberration. It's the thing out of the norm. It's the plane that doesn't land. But your press releases are all about lawsuits that you have either filed or won. And I just wanted you to talk kind of generally about the important work that you guys and your team are doing every day, because there's a lot of wins and important good news.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, look, first of all, we know people are suffering. We know this administration is harming a lot of people. And so we're not going to minimize the harm. That's why we're in court every single day on behalf of people and communities. But we are winning. There have been about 700 lawsuits filed since inauguration. By and large, the president's losing about 70 to 80% of them. We have filed a fair number of them, a large percentage of the lawsuits, and we are winning a lot. Just this morning, we won a big court order out of federal court in D.C. that is a big block to the president's, what he calls his immigration agenda, but we know is his power grab agenda, where he was trying to deprive people in the immigration system of access to basic judicial review in the courts. A big court order on that. On Friday night, we won another court order to prevent ICE from using tear gas against protesters and to poison communities and people that live in housing. And then on Saturday, I mean, this is like the weekend of wins. On Saturday, Judge Lambreth, who is a Reagan appointee judge, issued a very significant court order saying that Voice of America, remember that, Carrie Lake has been improperly there, and none of her actions to decimate the agency should be afforded any effect. And he's already issued an order to try to continue to recover what happened. So that's just in the last 3 days, of wins against this administration.
So let's just talk about the second one that you mentioned, which I believe it has to do with Portland, yes. Oregon, where they were using all kinds of different devices and chemicals. Here it is, federal court orders. Department of Homeland Security immediately stopped flooding Portland homes with toxic chemical munitions. I feel like that is a good one to ask you about the example of, does the court order work? Because you can see whether or not they, in this case, the Department of Homeland Security, whoever agency is using these, stops using them. How do you know that the court order is taking effect? I mean, it's a weird question that we have to ask these days, but it does seem like an actual question we need to know.
Yeah, we know because we're representing the people that are affected. So we're going to know immediately if they're ignoring the court order or if they're following the court order. We have been able to force the administration to comply with court orders. It is not normal that I would have to say that. Normally you just go get a court order and people and the government and everyone complies. Here, there's a whole strategy and team that has to work extra hard, twice as hard in some cases after we win a court order to make sure that they're enforced. But we are ensuring that court orders are enforced. And I think this one, to our knowledge right now, is that it is being, but we will be back in court instantly if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, which we were having to do in a number of our cases.
So that's the question I had. Is my mic on now? People watching live said I was on the wrong mic and I sounded too far away. Hopefully I'm good now. Skye sounds and looks great, and I'm supposed to be the professional broadcaster. But you guys are doing such great work, and every day, as you just mentioned, the wins just this weekend alone. Talk to me about this big lawsuit and action that has been taken to protect law firms from being corrupted and blackmailed by this administration. It started, I guess, during the campaign, and then after the election, we heard all this news about all these major law firms bending the knee. Some didn't, some did. I love that quote that you put out about something about your reputation or your courage is your currency. I think that's so important in every industry, but certainly in any industries being targeted and law firms being targeted by the Trump administration. What is the latest on that?
Yeah, so these are the lawsuits that have come about from several law firms that, instead of bending the knee, actually chose to be lawyers and to step up and to sue the administration when the administration targeted them. At Democracy Forward, we are not involved in those cases directly. We have had to go to court and won a court order to protect the American Bar Association because the president tried to retaliate against the American Bar Association for its radical idea that you have to defend the Constitution if you're a lawyer, which is in our oath. So, but the law firm suits are really great to follow because they follow a trend we've seen in a number of our cases. So the administration comes out, targets law firms. The four that sued two of which, or one of which I practiced at earlier in my career, WilmerHale, but great firm that did not capitulate. So we're very proud of WilmerHale. But the four firms that sued, they were before different judges. All the judges ruled that what the president did was unconstitutional, like judges that were appointed by Democrats, judges that were appointed by Republicans. There was not a difference in sort of the rulings. And the administration knows it's going to lose. And so what it did was it slow rolled taking the appeal, tried to ask for a bunch of extensions, got some extensions, and then last week announced that it was going to walk away from the appeal. This is actually something the administration does all the time. They do it in a lot of our cases because they don't want to have another loss and they want to brag about their appeals ratio. So they have to take away a lot of the cases they don't want to appeal. So they did that. And then the president woke up and got mad when he saw the headlines that said things like, kudos to the firms that had courage. Look, you forced them to walk away. Again, something that happens more often than people think in a lot of these big cases. And we understand that he got upset. And so the Department of Justice went back to court to walk back its walk back, which is just unbelievable.
Is it also unprecedented in any kind of legal, like?
I mean, I've not seen something like this. It's very incompetent. I'm not sure, has somebody somewhere done this? Maybe. I don't know that the Department of Justice, which, in other times is supposed to be seen as one of the gold standards of sort of litigation skill. But yeah, so they walked back their walk back. Then they filed like a 90-page brief on Friday. The only lawyers that signed it were political appointees, and they're going to lose on appeal. But the president was mad about the headline, so he's moving forward with it.
Yeah. So just about that, I mean, just take off your legal hat and put on, I don't know, your political or media hat, which is the average person. So I love talking to you because you're so good at explaining all these really important things. But most of us, we see the headlines. I do a news segment every day. So I read the headlines to people. This is what happened. This is what the Trump administration is doing. This is who they're going after. But what they don't read is what we don't know often, because we're not paying attention, we don't see it, is the failure of that attempt or that initiative or that threat, and the failure usually comes as a result of organizations like yours suing. And they don't see that they're slow walking the appeal or that they just don't appeal it. They only still think that the administration is doing these terrible things, but you guys are doing a great job to combat them. But most of us don't really follow up. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, most people don't know.
Yeah, that's why we're so glad you have us on, because the thing is, our wins are making the same headlines. People are talking about it. But I do think there's something about in this media environment right now about we're all just so accustomed to like, what is he going to do today? What are they going to do today? And so that's where we go. And we're constantly looking at this. And in many cases, they've suffered a lot of setbacks. And the president has actually not been able to successfully retaliate against most of the people he's targeting, if you look at it.
Well, even if your wins make the headlines, it doesn't mean that I saw it, meaning the public is left with the impression that our authoritarian president has made this threat, fired this person, gone through this, or is going to, and that creates an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. They don't realize the headline of your lawsuit and the wins, and so they don't necessarily see how much success people are having pushing back, which leads me to that question. How do you characterize to the public how much you're actually winning and how they should pay attention to an organization like yours, support an organization like yours, and find ways to fight back?
Yeah, I mean, the administration has lost about 70 to 80% of the time.
Crazy.
Like, numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. They go out, they start trying to brag on their appellate ratio because they're so mad about their overall ratio, which is why, by the way, they don't appeal things. They know they're going to lose. But even that doesn't tell the full story. So that's like in just numbers. And we have those on the website. People can follow democracyforward.org. We also have like real people and communities that we represent that have been courageous when powerful institutions have not. And they have stepped forward and they are here to tell the story. They stepped forward and they didn't turn into a pumpkin. In fact, they defended their rights and they inspired people. And so what we want people to know is that like lawyers like us, we are going to fight every single day in court. The legal effort that we are leading right now, along with a lot of other organizations and state AGs, is the largest and most successful legal effort against an executive branch in United States history at this point. Now, the president is still intent on harming people, so we can't stop all of the harm, and we're not going to be able to stop the president's complete attempt to subvert our elections, to subvert our democracy and separation of powers. That is going to be the people. And so a lot of our work too is about helping people see you do have power in this moment. See, look what these people did in court. You can get out on the streets. And that's what you've seen with the No Kings work. It's what you've seen in Minneapolis. It's what we're seeing increasingly with people spontaneously in their communities, including in red communities like the one that I grew up in, that are stepping forward and saying, like, I don't know what any of this is, but it's wrong and I'm going to protect my neighbor. And we're all going to have to do that over the next year and the years to come.
Well, the big question, I'm going to save it for a minute, but you just mentioned it, is the midterm elections and how they are going to interfere and what we can do legally, because that's the scariest one for everybody. But before we get to it, just a couple of other triumphs of yours or developments. The federal court blocks significant pieces of administration's sweeping immigration appeals rule that eliminates meaningful justice review. I don't think I know what that means, but it sounds really good.
Yeah, so that was this morning, actually last night at 11:40 Eastern time. If I have my time correctly, the federal court issued this order. We challenged the administration sought to create a new policy that it was seeking to enforce without any type of public comment that would have deprived immigrants and people within the immigration system of the ability to meaningfully appeal determinations of judicial review. So that is a piece of this. Like, there are asylum seekers, there are people in this country that need to be able, they're trying to go through the process. They've got to be able to go through the process and have their cases heard. The administration just wants to cut all that off, just like they don't want people to have lawyers. This is kind of part of the strategy. And so Judge Moss last night, a federal court here in D.C., issued, a really solid ruling that's going to protect a whole lot of people that are within this process and to protect their rights to process.
So when we talk about, all these wins that you guys are racking up and all the work that you're doing, I mean, part of it is because you have a great team and you guys are very aggressive and very smart, hardworking and inspired by the times, of course. But some of it, I feel like, is that, as you mentioned, just the political appointees are signing on to this appeal or this lawsuit or decision. And it feels like a lot of the people that work in Department of Justice are not competent lawyers. And a lot of it used to be the place to go, right, to start your career. And working at the Department of Justice was a great honor, but I'm not sure who is left there. But it does seem, just watching the news and watching certain cases work through court, guy throws a sandwich at the cops, they try to indict him, can't do it. James Comey can't do it. Tish James can't do it. I mean, these types of failures for prosecutors to get an indictment are rare. How much of it is they're incompetent? How much of it is there's no case here for anybody? You mentioned, the political appointees. Why is that significant that they only get signatures from them and not the rest of other lawyers at Main Justice, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's like a combination of the incompetence and the fact that the president is governing on like a collision course with the Constitution. And you put those two things together,
right.
And, it's really, there's no way for the government to prevail. So you see incompetent filings. You see filings that are coming in that are clearly copied and pasted. You see people coming in, and the best thing you could say about it is it's incompetent, because the worst is that they're intentionally misleading a court. So you have, lots of documented instances of misstatements, misrepresentations that the government's been making in court, so much so that legal scholars that are looking at it are arguing, as are we, that the government should not be entitled to any type of presumption of regularity anymore, because the courts are just so skeptical of what they're seeing. Then you have the fact you've got a president, Stephen Miller, a range of other folks in this administration that just do not like the United States Constitution. They're governing in a way that is on a collision course with the Constitution. You cannot shoot a protester for engaging in and kill a protester for engaging in a peaceful use of their First Amendment rights. You cannot shuffle people out of the country without any process. Like, these are basic constitutional protections that the administration continues to violate. And I think that's what you're also seeing in the prosecutorial context, where Donald Trump has this wish list, but there's just nothing. There's no case there. There's no evidence there. And so I think all of those things. So what we're seeing in terms of the career and political is, career civil servants. We do a lot of work at Democracy Forward on behalf of career civil servants that the president has terminated or fired because they're nonpartisan in career. They serve anybody. They're not here for a political agenda. So many of them have left the Department of Justice either because they've been fired. One of our colleagues at Democracy Forward was fired by the Department of Justice because he refused to lie to a court. His name's Erez Ravini. attorney. He's here because he was fired by the Department of Justice. Then you have other people who've had to leave the Department of Justice because they don't believe that they can practice there consistent with their professional obligations. And then, of course, there are still people at the Department of Justice that are career employees who I think are trying to do what they can consistent with their professional obligations. And that is why we're continuing to get a lot out of the government in court. They're having to expose, tell on themselves, come back into court and say, oops, we messed up. We said this. That's likely because of those career employees that are saying, guys, if you cross this line, I'm out of here. And so I think you have all of those dynamics going on at the department right now, which is highly abnormal, never happened before.
Never happened before is really important. To talk about something being unprecedented. It's never happened before. We've never seen you've never seen either seen an administration, an American government, even a governor of a state really. You said this little thing called the Constitution. I mean, it's almost easier to say checks and balances or rules. Some people might say rule of law. They don't like to be told they can't do anything. It's like a child. Like I don't know what to tell you. You're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. Right. Well, I'll do whatever I want. That's the authority.
Yeah. And so now what you have is like last week, you have the Department of Justice coming out with a proposed regulation that's they want to make it harder for state bars, which we're regulated by our state bars as attorneys, to make it harder to investigate government attorneys for their wrongdoing. I mean, this is sort of the administration. If you can't follow the rules, change the rules. We're opposing that. We will sue on it if it comes to pass. It might not come to pass because I think we'll oppose it earlier on. But this is the kind of thing you see. It's not normal. It's unprecedented.
Well, part of that, I think I saw you talking about this on MS Now over the weekend, is, with any of these actions being taken by any leadership at any agency, obviously DOJ, one might think, well, listen, if I do this, I know it's wrong or it's illegal, but if I get in trouble, he'll pardon me. Maybe he's already pardoned them. That could be the case. Right. But as you're saying, yeah, but you can't pardon someone out of being disbarred. If you're a lawyer being disbarred, it's a wrap, right?
Yeah, you can't pardon someone out of being disbarred. Donald Trump's not going to be able to help you. He's also, just to go back to the election theme you raised, not going to be able to help federal agents if they intimidate voters, because there's criminal penalties for that extend beyond his term in office. And so I think that just to say there is a lot, this president is asking a lot of people in the country to carry his water, to do his bidding, that don't enjoy the powers that he apparently believes he enjoys, which is to be able to exist without accountability. And I think that's why you see the Department of Justice struggling to keep up with these lawsuits. You see people that have dedicated their whole careers to the department leaving and going and doing other things, many of them at Democracy Forward, because it's just an untenable situation.
I have a few specific questions about the election. I'll let you go, but I'm not going to ask you those questions. I'm just going to ask you specifically, generally, about the midterm elections. Like, what are you worried about? What are you gearing up for? What helps me sleep at night, honestly, is knowing that your organization is doing the work it's doing. Democracy Forward is doing the work that it's doing, but I also am aware that attorneys general nailed it. People don't give us enough credit for getting it right. Attorneys general instead of generals. They are talking, like they're on a chat, like all the blue state Democratic attorneys general are talking to each other and preparing for, I'm hoping, every outcome, every scheme or scam. What should we be worried about? What are you preparing for? I hear smart people predicting really scary things about the midterm elections.
Look, we're in the middle of, as we speak, you don't have to worry or wonder what's going to happen. We are in the middle, as we speak, of an attempt to subvert the U.S. elections. In cases that we are litigating right now at Democracy Forward, the government has filed documents admitting that it misrepresented to the court last year when it said that DOJ didn't have people's personal data, that DOJ did have people's personal data, and that a DOJ team member signed a voter data agreement with a third-party voter organization that the government admits has been involved in trying to overturn state election results. Oh. That is on the dockets in federal courts now. It's something that everybody should be talking about every day. And this is what we're already seeing in the cases. So we are prepared and we are preparing, and we are going to expose and challenge attempts to subvert the elections through data. The president has already been turned back multiple times. He doesn't ever say this, but he tried to nationalize the elections in an executive orders last year. He's lost by and large most of those cases. We believe that he will try to do more militarization of cities like what you saw in Minneapolis to try to prevent people from being able to vote or to invoke emergency powers. We are ready. The attorneys general will be ready, and we're going to fight every single day. But what we're calling on all Americans to do is they're not going to be able to rely on just us and the attorneys general and our lawsuits. This is going to require that every single American understand and say that they are going to be part of an effort to peacefully and directly and unequivocally make clear that we are not going to allow this president to take away our votes, to refuse to count our votes, or to refuse to realize the results of an election. And so that's a lot of the other work that we're doing at Democracy Forward in mobilizing communities to also be able to respond.
You guys are doing such amazing work, and you help us keep our eye on the ball because you're doing it 24/7. I appreciate you joining me and giving me these updates. I hope everybody goes to democracyforward.org. They're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Blue Sky, Twitter. Go follow them. Go support them. Send them their money with Skye Perryman's leadership and great team that she's assembled there. You guys are doing your very best to protect us, and we really appreciate it. It's very inspiring and brings a lot of hope. So if people are looking for it, they can find it with you guys. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you. All right.
There she goes, Skye Perryman, Democracy Forward. How about it? Great get for me and the show, and always a great guest doing very important work. And now it's time to talk to another great guest. We love Nyyera Huck. She and I met years ago on Real Time with Bill Maher, and we've been on other panels together, other shows together, and talking to each other on each other's different channels for years. She's very, very smart. She's now over at Syracuse University, actually. She's gone to academia for a job to some extent. She's also doing tons of media always as well, and you should follow her on Instagram because she has these really good shorts that explain a lot and in a very short amount of time. So absolutely give her a follow over on Instagram at Nyyera. She says it at the end. It's hard to pronounce the way that she spelled her Instagram handle, but it's Nayyeroar. Go follow her on Instagram and watch these and listen to our conversation. You can watch it. We were live on YouTube and Substack yesterday. Here we go. Look who I found. Nyyera Huck, my old friend. Hello, old friend.
Hi, friend. I'm glad you reached out.
Yeah, it's been way too long, but I've been seeing these Instagram reels that you're doing, which are really good and informative, and you're very good at it, and they're perfect for this time. And so I just said, you're probably in a lot of demand right now whenever there's big foreign policy things, much less wars. A lot of people want to talk to you. So I had to get my invitation in. So thank you for accepting.
You're always at the top of my list, Pete, because you have real conversations, you connect dots, and that's what friends are for. But thank you.
You're now an academic too. You're teaching at the College of Syracuse University.
I am. And, academia has its own challenges right now, but I genuinely love talking to the undergrads. I talk to a bunch of graduate students too. They're in a different phase of life. But undergrads are just trying to figure out what is happening. And pretty much the question I was getting, wait, how is this happening right now? How is this how things are structured, right? Because they spend all this time studying political science and history and the theory of things. And they're like, but that's not how things seem to be working right now. But the craziest thing is their memories, they don't have memories of an Obama administration.
Really?
So,
yeah. I guess that's the
age.
If
you're 20 and 21, you're really your awareness of politics was Trump, Biden, Trump.
Right. Would you care to generalize about the generation that you're teaching?
Sure. I think their starting baseline is so much better than what we started with, what I was college at least 20 years ago, if not more, lots more than that. But the idea that, they look at me, they're like, how did you guys not believe in climate change? I'm like, okay, so there's a senator who showed up on the Senate floor and it was in the middle of summer. And he's like, see, this is a snowball. So if this is a snowball and it's summer, how can there be global warming? I'm like, that's what the discussion was back then, right? So that's the hole we were digging out of. Right. So that's their baseline. They see systemic injustices, and here's what I mean. They're not like my generation, where it's like, oh yeah, if you go to college, everything's going to be fine, right? Get a degree, you'll have a great job. They're the okay, so I've been told I go to college, we're paying a lot in student loans, and I'm probably not going to be able to afford a house in my lifetime, and I did nothing wrong. Like, they did what they were supposed to do, right? I'm talking to young people, but they also are just very, for whatever their own personal proclivities are, they're just very accepting of, okay, you do you. Like, okay, that person's gay. Got it. Okay. Like, all right, you do you. And I love that. It's like on those issues, I just feel like there's so much, their starting point is so much better. Now, I just said that they're economically facing a catastrophe, but their eyes are open about it, right? They realize that this is not something that they as an individual can work harder or, drink less Starbucks to work themselves out of it. Like, no, this is massive systemic change that is needed. And they're also more global. They've been seeing everything coming on their phones. And so they are aware that there's different ways of doing things. Like, we don't have to live our lives in America this way. This is a choice that our system is structured this way.
I could talk about that generation for a long time because, as you know, my daughters are 18 and 21. So they're, the age of your students. And I can make all kinds of generalizations and assumptions. But I just want to ask you specifically one more thing about their generation as it relates to as it relates to politics. Specifically, I'm asking you the Zohran Mamdani question. You're a New Yorker, now living down in the D.C. area, of course. But, I mean, what do you make of his rise and his election and his identity as a Muslim and a democratic socialist? Like, isn't that a lot because of what young people want?
It is. It's still shocking to me, to be honest. I mean, but I also was working on the Obama primaries, Obama campaign. I was like, wait a minute. Did we actually do this? Did we actually elect a black man president? And then we saw the backlash that came to that. But right, the idea that our country can, when motivated to, can do things that are beyond expectations and see past different labels to just get to the heart of what something matters. And Mamdani very carefully ran a affordability, accessibility campaign, right? Making these more affordable, cutting away the old guard, getting to people in new ways. I think that resonates. If you want to get anyone under the age of 45 to vote, that's the approach you have to take. I mean, that's not what the older liberal Democratic establishment is doing, but I don't see it as very different than what Tallarico did in Texas, right? He is leaning on what he knows as a person of faith to make that a multi-faith, multi-community conversation. And he's also leaning on affordability and things like housing. Like, this is a cross-cutting issue for our country right now. And the candidates that aren't able to address the economic challenges, the systemic challenges we have, who's going to want them?
As you're sitting here talking, I'm reminded of how much I love listening to you. Your analysis and commentating on everything from parenting to politics. Obviously, I want to talk with you about foreign policy, which you're really an expert on, but you're an expert on all this stuff, and you have a lot to say about all of it, and I always love hearing from you. So I want to just also ask you about, I mean, he's a Muslim and a socialist.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I could say that about myself. I mean, not the socialist part. I mean, I'm unpacking a lot of the stuff that I grew up thinking was, this is good policy. This is how the country has to be. I mean, my parents came to this country and they, thought that Reagan was right about everything. Oops. Oops. Right. And I was on Capitol Hill as my first job, actually, I was a staffer, when 9/11 happened. So I came up in a national security environment that was all fix terror, stop terror, everything is security, right? And quote unquote being the good Muslim that was around. So it's all a lot. And I just this is why I say I feel like I'm going to be one of those aging ladies wearing a muumuu, just wanting to hang out with young people, because young people are so inspiring and they're so wonderful. And I'm not one to, I will dog on them for how they deal with social media, but I also don't think that's necessarily their fault. I think we threw a whole bunch of developing brains into this new way of communicating, and the companies knew what they were doing, but families didn't. I tend
to think about that issue as a parent of daughters who are 18 and 21, and
especially girls.
Yeah, oof. But I say it's not their fault. Like, by the way, if we had all this stuff when we were younger, it'd been the same. So we sit here and scold them, but they don't know the difference. That's how they grew up. Today, though,
have you seen the elders, like boomers and older, like the seniors, if you give them WhatsApp or you give them Instagram or something, they have zero ability to check out. Like there is like a whole senior level to this discussion of how addicted they are to social media. So it's not an inherent resilience of the generation. It's literally, this is what the stuff is designed to addict your brain and to give you constant dopamine hits. That's what you get.
Absolutely right. I fully agree. Doesn't matter who it is. Today, Republican Congressman Ogles, what's his first name? Andy Ogles. He said Muslims don't belong in American society. I'm not sure about the context, but I don't think it care. I don't think it matters. We're obviously, yesterday there was this really strange thing that happened in New York City where this right-wing provocateur named Lang is a real piece of shit. They brought a roasted pig to leave outside of Mamdani's office, I think, because they wanted, pork and Muslims. Obviously, people know what I'm talking about. And then there was this counter protest, anti-Nazi protest. And then apparently guys who identified as ISIS made some rudimentary bombs and threw them. Nobody got hurt as a result, but they got arrested. There's, a lot
There's
happening
a lot in there.
That's
there. A lot in there.
But
so much.
How do you respond to any of that? And do Muslims?
I remember in kind of like the early years of the war in Afghanistan, whereas the idea of like, oh, let's put these bullets in pig oil or pig's blood, and that'll really get them. That'll really get them. So, I mean, this stuff is not new. The idea of identifying one group as an enemy and taking some basic rudimentary religious understanding and trying to turn it against them, right? I'm like, okay, that's like the equivalent of like, all right, we've identified vampires, and let's, use some crosses and holy water. I'm like, okay, if that's how you want to treat a whole section of society, got it. That's a choice, but there you go, right? But I'm not one to necessarily protest individuals for their faith. Anyway, it's like you're already at a weird starting point for me when that's what you're doing. I mean, clearly, I'm glad Mamdani and nobody else was really hurt. The idea, though, of countering an anti-Nazi protest, I'm like, who's the pro-Nazi part? Like, right? What?
That's the time we're in. I mean, that is just the time that we are in.
And it's New York. New York's got all sorts that make it tick every day.
You
Absolutely. Name it. But I'll be the first one to say, don't shoot protesters, don't hurt protesters, like, accept that there's debate and there's just weird people out there and figure it out. But that's the part that's hard for people right now, is actually not resorting to violence as the first step versus the last step.
Well said. Let's talk about Iran. So much to know.
Yep. Speaking of violence, right? Yeah.
I don't know what question to ask. I know I have some, but do you want to just talk about your thoughts?
No.
Okay.
No, because I will be all over the place. There's so many different directions to take this, and I'm also still curious to hear how everybody else is also thinking about it. Well, I think of it through the lens of, as a former diplomat, as a communicator, as somebody who has, spent time in the region, as an American in the region. Like, there's a whole jumble of things. What are you thinking?
Who cares what I think?
Clearly all the people who are listening to you right now.
Well, no, they care what my guests think. I mean, I appreciate you asking me that, but I mean, let me just refine it to one specific thing, which is I feel like most of the people who understand the region and the history and U.S.-Iranian relations, throw in the whole Middle East if you'd like, could have predicted that what would happen. Obviously, you never know. That's the issue with foreign policy. You don't know. No matter how certain you are, you can't be certain. For example, the other night, apparently Israel bombed a whole bunch of refineries that the U.S. didn't know they were going to do, and now the U.S. is mad at Israel for not telling them just how many they were going to bomb. Obviously, the price of oil is skyrocketed. I just saw $8 in California, some gas station, over $5 for sure there. You could have predicted that. That's my point. You could have predicted that even if you killed the 86-year-old supreme leader, they would just replace him with another. It's not regime change. They changed a bunch of guys, but the regime isn't. You could have predicted so much about Iran if you knew the history and these relationships. And I feel like so much of that is absolutely coming true. That's where I wanted to start.
And it is. And thing is, you don't need to be an expert in any of this. You just need to have been paying attention to how the world has been working the last couple of years. Basic sense of history. And that's the part that's most alarming, because it seems that Everybody else I encounter, Republican, Democrat, the majority of Americans are politically unaffiliated. We're all like, what is happening and why? I feel like in the run up to the Iraq War, and yes, we find out that they lied to us and Colin Powell was used to lie to the American public, but at least they bothered. They cared enough about the American public being on board to spend time on a massive campaign to get us on board, right? It was very much an American led effort, but they bothered to get other allies on the same page so that, their vision of day 2 or 3 success happened. Like Trump didn't even get past day 1 or 2 before everything's like, what is going on here, right? Is he going to step out at some point on an air carrier with a sign that says mission accomplished? Like we just keep hearing about all the winning, but where's the winning? I think it's very much that idea of, okay, a guy who does not necessarily read a lot, right? Who just consumes news bites, got convinced that what he did in Venezuela could happen in Iran, that these countries were interchangeable. And even hearing statements like, well, we're going to find somebody, we're hoping to find somebody we can work with in the regime. I'm like, okay, so now you want to work with the regime that the people were protesting and you're upset with them. So that's the goal. And it's like, okay, so you want, it's hard to predict where this could go better because there's no real clear goal to head towards better. So it's all the random things that are obvious. Like, okay, obviously Iran was going to retaliate against our allies in the region. That's always been the case. That's why every president prior to this, anytime Israel has said, we're going to strike Iran, they're like, no, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it alone. We're not doing it. Trump is the first one to be like, sure, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this on. This is why, because the obvious counter reaction was going to be retaliating against U.S. interests. But because this wasn't planned with our allies in the region or with our NATO allies, you had situations like the U.S. embassy in Riyadh burning because an Iranian drone fell on top of it, right? Like they weren't able to evacuate. There were no plans for Americans of how Americans were going to be getting out of all of these embassies, whether it's, in Israel itself or elsewhere in the region. Like it's just the unnecessary collateral damage. And then to find out that this, we don't know who did this precision strike on a school of girls was not just once, but twice, and was done by the U.S. You're like, how is that going to win the hearts and minds of the people of Iran? You want them to rise up against the regime, but one of your first actions was to kill like 150 plus girls and teachers. How is this helping?
The New York Times reports 175. I don't know if it's students or not, but I think about those girls every day. I think about every day since it's happened. I think about that. I always think about.
You send your girl. I have a 5-year-old. Literally, she started kindergarten. You remember when she was born?
Yeah.
She started kindergarten. I'm like, you just send your girl off to school one day, and boom, that's it.
It's the violence that we are inflicting in Iran and many parts of the rest of the world. I feel like it comes due at some point. There is a cost to all of this. We're seeing the costs in lives. Obviously, 7 Americans are dead, and the president doesn't care about them. He thinks they're suckers and losers, and wouldn't even take his hat off at the dignified transition. But more importantly, not more importantly, but people don't care either about the financial costs, estimates of almost $1 billion a day, Nyyera. Like, what about that? People always like to make the point, and I think it's all right in this case. What could that pay for? But for what? How?
I actually looked up some numbers on that. So $2 billion gets you the entire annual spend for 7 states in the United States. That means the entire healthcare, the entire police budget, the entire education, the entire transportation budget for entire states. 7 entire states could get all of that for a year in one day of war.
I mean, if that's accurate,
Kaiser Family Foundation. Let me tell you, go on the Kaiser Family Foundation website, annual state budgets, and you can literally click on annual state budgets and see what they are. And I just clicked it about random states to get to $2 billion. And I looked at it, random states. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Delaware. That's Illinois. That's Connecticut, Arizona. Like I just picked, regional. I got to 7 to get to $2 billion. That's how much we could be doing right now instead. But right, there's always enough money for the military expenditure. There's always money for that.
What do you make of, like, we went through the war in Iraq, obviously. We saw the rhetoric of our leaders then, and I'm thinking of John McCain, obviously George Bush in the administration, but also certain senators. Everybody remembers, if they were alive, Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense at that time. But those guys, they look like children, or they look like serious leaders compared to Pete Hegseth, Lindsey Graham, Donald Trump. I mean, yesterday, Lindsey Graham was like, we're going to blow those people to hell, and I'm going to make a biscuit. But I don't think he said the biscuit part. But he's like, we're going to have them on their knees, and then I'm going to be on my knees. But he didn't say that part either. But the point is, the violence and the rhetoric, the kind of crazy sociopathic rhetoric.
We're not going to have any rules of engagement. We're just going to burn them. Like, that's the Secretary of War. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what kind of American personality is this that's being projected right now? I mean, we do know what kind of American personality is, right? Like, that's the thing. This is like the ugliest of, when they talk about ugly American tourists overseas, this is the worst of it.
And I wonder what the rest of the world.
That's what we're leading with. That's what we're leading with.
The rest of the world must look at us and be like, what is happening over there? Who are these people? By the way, a lot of these guys are Christian extremists, including Hegseth. I mean, they're no better than the theocrats the mullahs leading Iran, in my opinion. Hegseth doesn't want women to vote. There has been some reporting that there have been like mid-grade military commanders who have been talking to their troops about how this is lining up as part of a Christian responsibility. This is they're using the language of crusades, right, to get people on board to support this. And instead, these troops have been leaking to reporters like, what did you do? This is not what I signed up for. Like, I signed up to defend my country, not start something overseas. So that'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But that is, right, like, that Christian nationalism is a very strong narrative in our politics of power right now, not necessarily in everywhere in the country, but in the positions of power. Yes. You have Mike Huckabee, who is, evangelical #1 Christian nationalist, who is our representative to Israel. So he's not restraining anybody from anything right now. I think the end of this, right, the part of why the Trump administration is having such a hard time landing on one strategic goal that would narratively work for the American public is because they can't say what the real thing is. And the real thing is to create enough chaos in Iran that you have separate splinter groups, kind of like the balkanization of Iran. Right.
So Iran itself is not under control of any one regime or one person, and that allows the natural resources and all the other assets to be divided up and other countries to kind of, work their way through Iran. What that doesn't account for, of course, is the human cost, the refugee toll that may be even bigger and higher than what we saw come out of Syria. It doesn't count for any morality or humanitarian impacts, but it is a very likely scenario because that's essentially what everything points to. That this is, especially when Trump says he's going to be out of there in a matter of weeks. He's not trying to fix anything the way we tried in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Well, today, CBS News White House correspondent Weijia Zhang, I don't know how to say her name.
Weijia Zhang. Mm-hmm.
She says, in a phone interview, President Trump told me the war could be over soon. Quote, I think the war is very complete, pretty much. They have no Navy, no communications. They've got no Air Force. He added that the U.S. is very, quote, very far ahead of his initial 4 to 5 week estimated time frame. This looked like it would be the likeliest scenario. Limited strikes, although they don't seem very limited, and then just stop, and then declare that you won. I mean, he's been doing that from golf to elections. Doesn't matter what the outcome is, just say I won and walk away.
Yep. That's the part that the rest of us as Americans are going to have to deal with, because in his mind and in his telling and in MAGA's telling, this will have been a great success. And we're all going to be sitting around and like, okay, so this is the world we live in now. This is how America showed up, right? Like we all have to bear that. And that's at minimum deeply, deeply annoying. But it is going to create, I'll remind folks that even despite trying to stabilize and work on a constitution and transitional government in Iraq, the destabilization of the war led to ISIS.
Right. Yes. I mean,
right? Led to ISIS. 20 years in Afghanistan, where actually there were some great gains. All of those gains, like one of the gains was there was an entire generation of girls that went from school from first grade through college. An entire generation, 20 years, right? And within the days of the U.S. walking out, those girls, now young women, were shut indoors. Done. Right? So all of that horrible stuff that we were fighting came back. Imagine what can happen in Iran right now with a civilization and narrative memory that goes back 3,000 years, also known as the Persian Empire, right? So start with that. And now think about, big bombs. Okay, now we're done. And not even the effort or the lip service to making it more secure. And then we walk away. This is what horrifies me based on past practice, based on history of what we will continue to face in this country.
What was that saying that the Taliban or Afghans used about the Americans? They've got the watches. We've got the
time.
We've got the time. And what that means is like we are so in the moment and need to be satisfied right away in America. We're capitalists. We want pleasure right now. And other nations, often non-Western nations, they don't look at life that way. It's more of an entire generation's cause or mission, and then you pass it to the next one, even if you die without winning. And I think about that a lot because of 9/11. Yeah. I think about 9/11. I'm like, that was in the works for a very long time, was as a result of the Middle East conflict, our bases in Saudi Arabia, Osama bin Laden. We funded him first, and then eventually he attacked us. I think about that.
I mean, listen, our memories, American memories, are so short, and I include myself in this because this is stuff I learned along the way. Reagan funded the Mujahideen. They turned into the people that we ended up fighting, and it's the CIA helped depose a democratic government in Iran, install the Shah, supported the Shah as he was oppressing his people. He would burn people's feet in prison to get them to admit to supposed crimes against him, right? Like, the Shah was not a good person. And that is part of how the theocratic revolution began. It was to kick out the CIA and the Shah. And people over here want to sit here and talk about how his son, who's never set foot in Iran, may be accepted as a negotiating leader. Like, what kind of Kool-Aid are people drinking? Just basic understanding of the enemy, of who you're engaging with, would lead you to some very different conclusions than what U.S. foreign policy is today.
Well, the new supreme leader is the old supreme leader's son. So I guess they don't care about monarchy and dynasties, but more importantly, he's worse, apparently. So, and also,
'cause he's younger. He hasn't mellowed with age.
And also, even if he had mellowed, you just killed my dad. So I'm saying,
my sister, and my nephew. This is blood feud, lineage blood feud now.
Yeah.
That's happened, right? Like, it's like you could have gotten him, but you didn't. Congratulations. You left the one person in the mafia family standing. What do you think they're going to do next?
We've got the watches. They've got the time. And my time with you is up. I love talking to you. It's been way too long. I hope everybody goes and checks out your Instagram where you're posting these great shorts that are really informative. You're always excellent everywhere you are. And I appreciate you being here today, Nyyera.
Thank you, Pete. Folks, okay, you can find me at Nyyeror, Nayyeroar. I don't know who the other chick Nyyera is. It's not me. Nyyeror. And thank you, Pete.
And there's links in the show notes. Go check them out. Thank you. And we are out. Nyyera Hawk. So good. Always so good. And a lot of people were happy to see her back on the show and talking to me yesterday. So thank you for watching live. And hopefully you will watch live today at 10 a.m. and 12 noon East. I've got two great guests joining me, and I hope that you will check us out. All right. YouTube.com/StandUpWithPete or Substack.com/StandUpWithPete. And that is all I've got for you today. JohnCarroll.org, everybody. Go check it out. He writes and performs all the music. It's my mom's 80th birthday on Thursday. So if you're friends with Mom on Facebook, go wish her a happy birthday. And thank you for supporting me and my work here, you bumblebees listening all the way to the end. I'm glad you did and caught the conversation with Nyyera. And I'm glad that you are here, and I hope that you are doing all right out there, wherever you are, in your car, walking your dog, hanging out at home on the rowing machine, fishing. Who's fishing and listening to the show? I bet you it's happened. All right, that's it. I'll shut up. Bye-bye.
Now keep right on, you know, keep sitting right. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.